Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings. We've got a great show for you today. We've got a great guest for you today, Zac Reed, a.k.a. Tacit Assassin 13 on Twitter. Zac, thank you so much for being here. And just tell everybody what you've been working on and where they can find you.
So I appreciate you having me on. I am one half of the Dynasty Dummies. My better half, J Mike at J Mike Check, hosts the show. We've been doing rookies for the last 4 months. We do the Dynasty Dummies rookie hootenanny, and that all culminated with my film notes going to fantasycares.org. I've donated them.
Yes.
So yeah,
well, thank you for that.
It's been fun. We're in the throes of rookie season.
Yeah, you were talking about before. I thought what you said was very accurate. We have this marathon of getting to the draft, and then for creators, it's a sprint after the draft to get all that content out and accurate as soon as possible. I will say I got my top 50 out on Monday afternoon. By next Monday, there's probably going to be a few tweaks. You get that the rubber meets the road in rookie drafts, and you're like making the decision. Oh, I maybe I do like that guy more than this guy. On today's show, we are going to have a review of our one quarterback mock that we did yesterday with the staff, or 2 days ago with the staff, I guess. We're going to rank the running backs after the top two, because it seems like everybody knows the top two. We're going to rank the tight ends after Brock Bowers, and we're going to rank the wide receivers after the top six, because that seems settled to me. We'll see if it's settled to Zac. As always, we start with 3 questions for our guest, and we're back to the same normal first question for every guest again. We're out of building up to the draft season, so a lot of people have answered this question. So many answered super flex that you're not allowed to answer that way anymore. You're starting a new dynasty league. What is your one non-negotiable rule?
So I have kind of a two-parter where my first one is the people. And I know it's not a rule, but that's always the first. Russ Fisher and I are actually kind of hashing out a new dynasty league right now. And that was the first thing I said was, we need to have a really good set of people in the league, because that's what makes the league. But the other sticking point for me is I like to have a really good striation at quarterback. So I like to have a nice QB premium, and almost like what Scott Fish did a couple years ago in the Fishbowl, where he nerfed some of the quarterbacks who throw a lot of interceptions, don't throw for a high completion percentage, that sort of thing. So I know it's a little granular, but I really like that.
Yeah, I think differentiating, and it's tough. I think the difficulty is figuring out what things to reward and what things to penalize. Another thing Scott Fish has done is reward completion percentage. And I'm not sure the completion percentage is actually, Bo Nix might have a 70% completion percentage this year. It's going to be because he never throws the ball more than 4 yards. I'm not sure that's helpful. Let's go to question. I always like to throw a little shade to Scott Fish whenever I can. Everybody's always praising him, telling what a great guy he is, all this good stuff he does. No, he is a great guy. I love him. Who was your biggest winner from the NFL draft?
I think JJ McCarthy has to be, because before the run up to the draft, he wasn't even talked about in the first round. Then you had the big kind of hype churn after he won the national championship. And then he ended up in Minnesota with a ready-made wide receiving core. I mean, how does it get any better than that?
Right. No, I think it's, and we had this discussion on Tuesday's show with Jacob Gibbs, because Gibbs still has Drake May ahead of JJ McCarthy. And it didn't take very long on Sunday when I was going through everything for me to say, man, I had Drake May pretty convincingly ahead of JJ McCarthy before the draft. But I think the difference between their situation is bigger than the difference between the players.
Yeah. And I think there is a difference between the players. I think the overall upside of May is greater, but it's going to be a while before you even have a chance to see that. And then as you know, with quarterbacks, it's a 50-50 at best anyway. And so right. I'd rather get into the situation, and McCarthy has it.
Well, I think like McCarthy might actually be a starter for you as a rookie, and I just don't think it's fair. No matter what rookie quarterback you're putting into this situation in New England, you wouldn't expect them to be a fantasy starter. Maybe Jaden Daniels, I guess, because he runs enough.
Yeah.
Who is? Listen, we had a few people on this show last year say the name Puka Nacua out loud. We had a few people say Tank Dell. So we like to give everyone a chance to look like a genius. Who is your favorite player who's going to be available in most of the rookie drafts in round 3?
So I love Kimani Vidal, and I love the fact that he went to the Chargers. That backfield is at best nebulous, and they want to. I think they're going to want to run a little bit more than they have previously. He is a talented back in a light backfield. I don't think he's as good a pass catcher as what you might think if you look at counting stats, because he has like multiple 20 reception seasons in college, but he is a good pass blocker. So it won't take much to me if he gets on the field to be a real winner for fantasy.
One of those, ambiguous running back rooms with Gus Edwards, with J.K. Dobbins. I think those guys, like Gus gets the first shot almost for sure. We'll see if Dobbins ever regains his form, but that's a good one. There's a high upside opportunity there. I don't know how much the pass catching skills matter in a Greg Roman offense, because they're just going to run it 750 times anyways. So it'll be fine. I've got one more bonus question. This is either completely random or completely selfish. I'll let you be the judge. I tweeted this out earlier today. So hypothetically, let's say you're in a 14-team, 1-quarterback league. You're a contender, but you're not very deep. Finished second last year, have the 13th pick. No second-round pick for the next couple of years. You get pick 11 or 4 through 14 probably next year. There's a team that's ready to rebuild. The guy has Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Raheem Mostert, and he sees the end. What package are you pursuing with pick 13 this year, a couple of thirds, and a late round first next year? Who on this list do you want? Or if you wanted to go after all of them to try to build some real depth, what would you offer?
Wow. So I think immediately Raheem Mostert, because he's going to be value-wise is going to be cheap, but I think you're getting a lot of points for your bang for your buck. And then I think I'm probably going to try to target Devontae Adams, still established, a little older, but again, the number one, he should see 160, 170 targets again this year.
Right.
So those two, I think you might even be able to get that done for less than that first. But I like what you're doing there, where and I think that this is part of this this draft class, where because it's such a good draft class and because the consensus is that this is a good draft class, it's a great class to be able to move picks to get proven veterans. And so again, I think Mostert and Adams, you could probably, did you say you have a couple of seconds? Or
no, I said I don't have any seconds. That's the big challenge. Yeah. It's pick 13 or it's thirds or it's a 2025 first, which I think technically speaking, a 2025 first for a team that is good as this one probably going to be less valuable because you have to wait a year for it. But there's still that upside of maybe my team falls apart and the 2025 first is worth a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough. So, and again, like,
well, I guess here's my question. What collection of these guys would you give pick 13 this year for?
So I would do that for something like Eckler and Diggs. And because I think you've got a little bit more headed forward with Diggs. Like I really think Diggs is going to succeed either in Houston this year and onward, or in Houston and then end up somewhere else. So that's the target that I guess if you're locked into trading that first.
That's the end of me using my platform to try to help my own fantasy teams. Let's take a short break and we will jump into some running back discussion.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
So I think there's a pretty easy consensus top two at the running back position. Everybody kind of said, let's wait until we get draft capital and then we'll decide who we like more. But under the surface, it seemed like everybody thought, man, if Jonathan Brooks didn't have the ACL injury, he'd be the clear top back in this class. And then he goes the second pick of round 2. He's the easy top back for me. Trey Benson, the easy second back for me. After that, man, flip a three-sided coin as far as I'm concerned, and it comes down to Jaylen Wright versus Blake Corum versus Marshawn Lloyd. Do you agree those are the next 3 backs, and do you have a strong favorite amongst the 3?
The only other back that I would put in that group is Bucky Irving.
Yep.
Because I think the situation in Tampa plus his pass catching really bumps him up. For me, it's Corum, and I had Corum as my running back 1 pre-draft. So, and in a tiers, I think there were probably 5 running backs that were really interesting up at that top tier pre-draft. So for me, it's Corum, it's Irving, it's Lloyd, and then it's Jaylen Wright, even though that was a perfect landing spot for him.
Yeah, I think that the Jaylen Wright one is definitely the widest range of possible outcomes, because if it just turns out that Etienne can't stay healthy and Raheem Mostert's too old, then Jaylen Wright could be a league winner because it's Mike McDaniel's system. Is the Irving thing more about how you felt about him as a player or more about the opportunity because Rachaad White's just not been that successful running the ball?
So I think it's a combination, and I think that it's also the way, because I play, and primarily it's PPR now anyway, but I like primarily PPR, and the fact that Bucky Irving to me was far and away the best receiver, the best pass catcher in this class, outside of a couple, like maybe Ray Davis was better, but it's pretty close. And the fact that scores, I mean, a target is worth 3 and change times a carry.
Right.
And I do think that he lands there as probably the best pass catcher in the Tampa Bay backfield. And so I think that there is enough. I call that profile a pass catcher plus. So the guy who comes in who is a potential flex play because of his receiving. And then if there is an injury or something happens where he falls into favor, you've got a lot more upside that way.
Okay. So for the next tier, so you've put Bucky Irving up in that first tier. I had him in tier 2 with Braelon Allen, Will Shipley, and your guy, Kimani Vidal. Are you jumping Vidal all the way to the top of this group, or was it just because I gave the round 3 qualifier?
No, it was just because it was the round 3. So it was, for me with this group, it's obviously Irving, Shipley, Vidal, and then Allen. And Allen just got buried.
Yeah.
That was a little disappointing, although I was not as big on him pre-draft as a lot of people. I saw there were some people who had him as the running back 1. He's young. He had tons of carries, was very successful very early, but he just doesn't, to me, do enough with dynamism, and he doesn't do enough in the receiving game. And so couple that with being buried with Breece Hall, and also Isaiah Davis ended up there as well, who is another one of the sleeper darling backs, but a similar between the tackles pounder to Braelon Allen. It just, a lot of the air went out of the balloon there.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Like, the thing that was his best quality was that he'd shown that he'd succeed in a workhorse role, and now he landed in a place where there's almost no chance at a workhorse role. Do you think that Will Shipley is strictly a third down back, or do you think he's somebody who could ever be a 12 to 15 carry per game guy?
I think he's probably, and again, it's a little bit of that pass catcher plus profile. I think he's probably a third down back. I do think he can, in a pinch, play between the tackles, but I don't think he's ever going to be that, 12, 15 carry guy. It doesn't quite feel that way to me.
So we've pretty much covered my top 8, 9 running backs in the class. And we covered your favorite pick that's going to be available in round 3. Is there a running back you really like that I didn't include in this group?
There is, and I have him up in this group, and it's Rasheen Ali. And I know that he didn't quite get the capital. He was round 5 to Baltimore, but he is one of the most dynamic backs in this class. I think that he fell because he tore his bicep at the Senior Bowl. So he had a great start to the week, ended up tearing his bicep. He was fantastic as a freshman. Had an interesting. He left the team. He had kind of personal reasons. Left the team as a sophomore. Then came back again and was great. And is a pass catcher in that Baltimore backfield. And again, I know Derrick Henry's there, but he is dynamic back and as a 5th round pick. And then Tyrone Tracy went right behind him.
Right.
To the Giants, who's another dynamic pass catching. I have a type. I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tracy's another one that I wonder, like, can he be more than the 3rd down back? But the thing that I like for Tracy is it's much easier for me to believe he's going to supplant Devin Singletary than someone's going to supplant the combination of Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell, which I was a pretty big Keaton Mitchell fan. So I think, yeah, that the opportunity is probably more there for the Giants. It's just, can the player Tracy be more than that airback type of back?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the wide receiver discussion. I said that I thought there was a pretty clear top 6. I think you can tell who I'm putting in that list. It's Harrison, it's Neighbors, it's Rome Odunze, it's Brian Thomas, it's Xavier Worthy, it's Ladd McConkey. Those guys in some order. I guess first question, do you agree that's the top 6 and it's pretty obvious?
I do.
Are those the only 6 that you're taking in round 1, or do you have any more round 1 wide receivers like in a super flex league?
No, those would be the top. And I think probably in a super flex league, maybe McConkey slides out of round 1 for me just because of the way quarterbacks are valued. But yeah, the top 6, you got them.
Okay, so let's move on to the next group. And this is not necessarily ordered by my rankings, but I feel like with Keon Coleman, with Xavier Legette, with Ricky Pearsall, we're all kind of fighting the how much do we weigh their draft capital, because most of us have a wide receiver that was drafted after. Now, you might not, but a lot of us seem to have a wide receiver that was drafted after these guys that we like more than them, but they were borderline 1st round picks. So how do we value them? Do you have a clear favorite from this group?
From that group, I think it's Pearsall over Coleman over Legette for me. But again, it's a combination of pre-draft work, and then I think that there are, within the framework of the position of wide receiver, there are actually probably 5 different positions. So we kind of bucket that and say wide receiver. But a player like Keon Coleman is more of a traditional X, and I see that fail so much more often than a player who has the ability to slide into the slot and create separation, because he's a vertical separator.
Right.
He's a win at the catch point guy, and I know he's paired with Josh Allen, but he's still, to me, I would rather have the Pearsall, the guy who gets moved into the slot, gets put in motion, has maybe a little bit has to be schemed for, but is driving short targets, is driving plays where he can get yards after catch and amass fantasy points that way.
So I think that the elephant in the room with Pearsall is obviously that the 49ers were allegedly trying to trade Brandon Ayuk one day of the draft, trying to trade Deebo Samuel a different day of the draft, didn't get either of those deals done. And I've speculated that the reason is that the league knows they want to trade those guys and just aren't going to give them what they want. Do you have any concern with Pearsall that we're going to get a year of basically just a red shirt? And does that bother you with a border, like an early round 2 pick in a rookie draft?
So sure, it is a possibility. It's a distinct possibility. They've got a really full wide receiving core. They have a lot of talented players, even without the full wide receiving core. You've got McCaffrey, who is also a receiver. So yes, Pearsall could redshirt. For me in Dynasty, I will take the player that I think long term is going to be the more talented player over the short term gain, or what I might do in this situation is, because it to me is a tier, is move back to the back of that tier and have somebody make decisions for me, and then gain more draft capital either in this class or another class.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense. Let's talk about the next group, because I've got, this is where we get into the range of people look at you and say, why do you have that guy so high? Because it's Malachi Corley for me in the second group. And honestly, I like him better than some of the guys in the first group, paired up with Adonai Mitchell, who certainly has his fans, was projected he could have been a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Some people might still want to take him borderline round 1 in a rookie draft. And Troy Franklin, who was my number 4 wide receiver before the combine. He fell a little bit after the combine. He fell more after the NFL draft, but then he fell right into Bo Nix's arms, and that might be fantastic for him. So between Corley, Legette, and Franklin, do you think this is the kind of the next tier, or how do you feel about these guys?
So this is an interesting group. I actually have one other wide receiver over all of the players that we've talked about. But
Good.
out of this group, I have Adonai Mitchell and Corley, and they're really close. They're completely different players. Corley is that, the slot receiver who is, man, he's a bulldog once he catches the ball. Actually, I called him a dachshund in my write-up, but he's got that, he's got that stout build. He's got the ability after the catch. I really like him. It'll be interesting to see what happens in New York with him, because you've got Rodgers, and then you've got Garrett Wilson, who's obviously like uber talented, but not much else in that wide receiving core. So it'll be interesting to see. And then Franklin for me pulls up the rear. I had him at wide receiver 12 to pre-draft.
Okay.
And him falling, he's really dynamic downfield.
Right.
But I think he is a little bit slight. And for a player who plays on the outside and plays downfield, he has trouble getting off press coverage, which to me in the NFL, if you're going to be split out wide, you have to be able to do at this point.
It's going to be fascinating what Sean Payton does with Mims and Franklin, because he's indicated he wants to get Mims more involved. I think both those guys probably better served to be moving around or in the slot. Cortland Sutton can't play both outside wide receiver spots, and they might want to trade him anyway. So I don't have much of an idea. I do fall for the guy getting drafted to the same team as college quarterback did, because those guys are the guys deciding who they throw it to. Yeah. So that makes me feel better about it. Let's see. I've got 2 more, and we may still not talk about your favorite, but Jalen, Polk, and Javon Baker battling it out in New England. Listen, I am a pretty big Demario Douglas guy, and Kendrick Bourne still exists. Who's the number 1 wide receiver this year in New England? And do you have a strong favorite between Polk and Baker?
So I don't even know if there is a number 1 wide receiver in New England this year. I'm up in Maine. I'm a Patriots fan. I suffered through the Rod Rust era, so like I've earned it. But now I feel like we're headed back toward that for me. And I saw you tweet this out a few days ago, and I am on the same page. I had Javon Baker rated higher than I did Jalen Polk. Mm-hmm. I think even though he was drafted 2 rounds later, I think that Baker is the better player. It will be interesting to see how that shakes out, because he is such a downfield and contested catch and efficient receiver, and Polk can kind of do everything. Right. And so it will be interesting to see how that shakes out. But if you just ask me who I think the better player is, I think it's Javon Baker.
Who is the best wide receiver I've not brought up yet?
So I think there are 2, and Jermaine Burton with his ability, and I think a lot of the concerns were off field and kind of the mental issues. Him being drafted to Cincinnati, with Cincinnati kind of in a little bit of a pinch monetarily headed forward, and with the talk that T. Higgins might be a tradable asset this year, drafting Burton, who can kind of play all over the place. He can be the Tyler Boyd replacement, but then also grow into a bigger role. I really, really like that a lot. And we talked about
which group would you place Burton in?
So I've actually got Burton in my rankings. I have Burton ahead of Pearsall. So
Okay.
Burton would be my 7.
Okay.
And again, it was pre-draft. I liked him. I called him Temu Drake London, like that. He felt like that little off-brand Drake London type player. But he's my current 7.
Okay. And then who was the other one?
The other one. Oh, actually, no. Actually, the other one dropped. So I think the other player that I have that I thought was really talented, and I was hoping the Patriots drafted, was Tez Walker.
Okay.
And again, you put, you mentioned the Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, having May, having Walker, and Walker was the most talented player on the field by far for Carolina this year.
Right.
Like in 8 games, he was their best player for the season. So, but having him fall to Baltimore was just a killer.
Right. Yeah. So, no, it's like landing spot does matter for a variety of reasons. And, to some extent, tight ends also matter. If I thought that it was a clear top 2 or a clear top 6 at the running back and wide receiver position, well, there's maybe a 2-round difference between Brock Bowers and any other tight end if it's not tight end premium. But the thing that I like is we do have plenty of debate. There's different people have, I think, 3 or 4 different guys at tight end 2. I had Jacob Gibbs on Tuesday. He had Eric All at tight end 3. He went tight end 6 in a tight end premium draft that I did the same day. So there's healthy debate amongst these guys. Who are your, I've got the next 4 in some particular order as Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, and Eric All. Would you agree with that order?
I agree with the 4.
Okay.
I don't necessarily agree with the order. I've got it Sinnott, Sanders, All, and Johnson.
Okay. And they're all kind of in places where we're a little bit uncertain about what their year was, except for Sanders. I think Sanders is probably going to be the starting tight end in Carolina this year, or at least lead them in targets. But you've got Sinnott with the Zach Ertz situation. You've got Theo Johnson with the Darren Waller situation. I guess Eric All has a decent chance. It's just Cincinnati loves to have 3 different tight ends that all catch 30 to 40 passes.
Yeah. And that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And it's I always go back to Peter Howard talking about how targets are earned.
Right.
And because they've got so many good pass catching options, All is going to have to be incredible to earn targets in that offense. And I don't think he does to start, but he is such an underrated player and an underrated athlete for my money. I mean, he had the injury, and so you didn't necessarily get to see it all the time on the field. But he's a player that I've targeted late in rookie drafts a lot, especially I play in a lot of 1.75 premium.
Right.
And it's so much worth it. You start looking at tight ends, and it's almost, you're looking for talent, but you're looking for talent tied to athleticism, because without athleticism at tight end, it really doesn't happen.
When you think about Sinnott's upside, is it tight end 10 in a given year? Is it tight end 8 in a given year? Am I too low on him, or is that about right?
I think that's about right. And again, I don't think that matters. So that's the rub with tight end is once you get past about 6, it doesn't really matter. The next 10, 12, 14 are all doing about the same. You're hoping that they catch a few passes, and you're hoping that they score. So it's a different game. And so that's why the way I play tight end is either bully tight end, where you go get the Kelsey, you go get the Kittle, you go get the Andrews, the top tier tight end, or I'll scattershot it and start drafting these, 4th, 5th round tight ends that are athletic. And so that's kind of where we're at with that.
We call that great or late.
Yeah.
And we argue about who came up with that name. But yeah, so agree 100%. Get a difference maker or don't spend any resources on it. Do you have a favorite tight end outside of those next 4?
So favorite is maybe a little bit of a misnomer.
Right.
I think probably the person that most people will be interested in is Cade Stover, but I don't think the overall upside is there. If I'm going to
Agree
shoot
completely.
If I'm going to shoot for upside, there are 1.5 players. Jaheim Bell, who got 7th round of the Patriots, who is not really a tight. He's like an H-back. I think
Right.
Charles Clay. Do you remember back?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Charles Clay was like tight end 8, 10, pretty consistently because he was they could use him in the goal line. They could use him to stretch the field and get the seam every now and then. I think that is potentially Jaheim Bell. And then the player that I'm really interested in picking up late is going to be Tanner McLaughlin. And again, another Cincy guy. So it's a bad situation, but big athleticism and an interesting player.
There were some people before the draft who thought McLaughlin was the top 3 or 4 tight end. So yeah, I think it's something to monitor at least. Let's take one more break and then we're going to break down our 1 quarterback mock draft.
From the world of Sonic the Hedgehog, is there anyone stronger?
No.
Tougher?
No.
Hungrier?
Grapes was an interesting choice for someone who doesn't use fingers.
Knuckles, now streaming only on Paramount Plus.
So I'll read from Jamie Eisenberg's notes here. He ran this mock. This is a 3-round full PPR 1 quarterback rookie mock. We start off with Jamie somehow gave himself the first pick. Come on, Jamie. Marvin Harrison goes 101. Malik Neighbors at 102. Caleb Williams at 103 to Dan Schneider. And I think we have to stop right there because that is about the highest I think you will see a quarterback go in a 1 quarterback rookie mock. Let's say that you just happen to have a pick out of happenstance and you are a good team or you're just wanting to rebuild. Like you love Caleb Williams. What's the earliest you could see taking?
Oh man, in a 1 quarterback, I probably not put. I don't even think he's the first quarterback I would take in a 1 quarterback league. I think I would take Jaden Daniels before I took Caleb Williams, even though I think Caleb Williams is a little more stable.
Right.
In a 1 quarterback league, you want to have the horses.
Yep.
And so if I think probably in this class, I might start thinking about a quarterback right at that turn. So like 111, 112, 201, that area. But I'm not thinking about a quarterback in a 1 quarterback league this early. And I think that Superflex has kind of seeped into the way we value quarterbacks in 1 quarterback leagues. And I'm still firmly that JJ Zachariason disciple of the late round quarterback. And I think you can actually make plays easier back into quarterback for somebody like Kyler Murray or somebody like Dak Prescott that gets you the points you need without having to spend, the 103.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I will say the only exception is that I drafted Patrick Mahomes when he was a rookie, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
104, Roma Dunze. 105, Brock Bowers. Probably not a surprise. 106, Jonathan Brooks. I took him there. In Superflex, I'm definitely higher than consensus on Brooks. I think he's going to be a true difference maker, and the fact that the rest of the class is so unimpressive. Like, man, if you got a 20-year-old who might be a workhorse back, how's that not a top 10 dynasty running back? So I've got Brooks at 6 here and 1 quarterback. I don't think that will get too much debate. But do you hate him over Worthy, or is it right after the first 3 wide receivers are gone, he's possibility?
I think you're in the mix there. I actually really like Xavier Worthy. I had him pre-draft as my wide receiver 3. I've got him post-draft kind of in the same tier as Odunze. And I know people have Odunze a little higher than that as consensus. But again, I don't dislike the Brooks pick. And always in rookie drafts, I am breaking ties to running backs.
Right.
So if I have a tier of receiver and a tier of running backs that are right there, it's always going to the running back because I think you're more likely to get instant production and you have the ability to either use that or trade it.
Second half of round 1 goes Adam Azer with Jaden Daniels. So 2 quarterbacks in the first 7. Then Keon Coleman, which is a big surprise at pick 108. Then Xavier Worthy. JJ McCarthy, because it's Thomas Schaefer and he's a Vikings fan, Brian Thomas, and Ladd McConkey. I know that's too many quarterbacks for you in round one. Maybe Daniels and Williams slide into the end there. Do you have hope that Keon Coleman could matter in a way like Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas?
I personally don't.
Right.
But I've been wrong before. But the type of player that Keon Coleman is, I prefer Odunze, Worthy, Thomas, and McConkey, all of them to Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. Let's talk about the top 12 once again. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, Jonathan Brooks. That was my pick. Jaden Daniels, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, JJ McCarthy, Brian Thomas, and Ladd McConkey rounds out round one. Round two starts with Trey Benson, then Jaylen Wright, then A.D. Mitchell, and Marshawn Lloyd. So this is a little earlier than I've seen the running back run in some of the mocks I've done. This is exactly where I thought the running back run was going to happen before the draft. I'm sure you're good with Benson here. Is it too early for your RB3, whoever that is?
I mean, I think you scared him, Heath. I think that's what happened. You know, you took Brooks, and then all of a sudden, everybody who's sitting there looking, we got to get running backs because there aren't very many left. I don't mind the upside and the players that went around those running backs. I don't have an issue with taking the running backs, but there are a few other players. And we talked that, like, we talked Pearsall, we talked Burton, like those guys I would push up above this running back run. But I don't hate it.
Right. So Drake May goes with the fifth pick of round two. I took Malachi Corley. In the super flex draft, I actually just refused to draft him because I wanted to see where he would go if I didn't take him. I think it's going to be early to mid round 3, which is a much better value than the middle of round 2, but in one quarterback, I can live with it. It goes May, then Corley, then Xavier Legette, then Bo Nix. I want you to talk about Corley versus Legette because the draft capital, obviously much better for Xavier Legette, but that might be the only thing that's better in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, again, Corley is a player who has potential to drive a lot of targets. I think Xavier Legette kind of duplicates 2 other receivers in Carolina, and I don't think that that's what Bryce Young was so good in college at getting the ball out quickly.
Right.
And it was very similar to me to when Tua came out. And you had that first year where he really struggled because he had Devontae Parker and they were trying to stretch the field and have him hold the ball in the pocket. And I think that when Bryce Young struggles, it's because he gets interior pressure and has to hold the ball longer. I don't think he's very good doing that. I love the Deontay Johnston
right
there, but Legette is another guy who is a little more of a downfield, not a great route runner, not a quick separator. And so I'm with you. Like I would take Corley over Legette.
The final 4 picks of round 2, Troy Franklin, Michael Penix, Blake Corum, and Ricky Pearsall. There were a lot of people dunking on the Falcons for the Michael Penix pick because they'd already acquired Kirk Cousins. But from a dynasty perspective, this is a guy that a lot of people thought really had some upside, and somehow he ends up with 8th overall draft capital. You kind of have to draft this guy here, right?
Yeah. I think so. And I think if you look at the Cousins contract, and I may have this a little squirrely, but I think it's 2 years and there's a potential out with like 12 million or so on the cap. And so it's not the worst possible pick for the Falcons.
Right.
And if you end up with a solid quarterback at the end of round 2 in a rookie draft, you're really happy about that.
I do wonder, and it could be impossible to figure out, but if you took all the people who drafted Jordan Love in a one quarterback league as a rookie, and I'd like to know how many of them started Jordan Love this year.
Yeah.
Like how many of them held on to him through that? I think in a super flex league, the number's probably higher, But in a one quarterback league, I'm assuming a lot of people already dropped Jordan Love. They're not going to admit it. It's okay. Let's recap round 2 once more. Trey Benson, Jaylen Wright, A.D. Mitchell, Marshawn Lloyd, Drake May, Malachi Corley, Xavier Legette, Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, Michael Penix, Blake Corum, rookie Pearsall. I like that Corum pick there at the end of round 2. Just real quick, do you think Corum has any chance of unseating Kyren Williams, or is it just an injury replacement?
I think he's actually a better version of Kyren Williams. Like that was what I saw. He may not be quite the pass catcher. So I don't think it's as set in stone that Kyren Williams is that leader in the backfield the whole way.
I like it. Round 3. This is where you just go get your guy. Nobody's going to tell you made a bad pick in round 3. Jalen Polk goes first in round 3, followed by Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton, and Jalen McMillan. Roman Wilson in Pittsburgh for the time being, really only George Pickens to compete with in the receiving room, but there's been some rumors there might be somebody else joining that room. If they try to put Roman Wilson into that Deontay Johnson role, could he be fantasy relevant?
Yeah, I think he can be, and I think he can be early. I don't know that he is quite as dynamic a separator as Deontay Johnson in terms of just creating space, but I think he's more dynamic once he's got the ball. And I like, to me, that is one of the, in the 3rd round, Roman Wilson is one of the steals of this draft.
Javon Baker goes with the 5th pick of round 3, followed by Bucky Irving, Ben Sinnott, and Jatavian Sanders. You like this run right here, don't you, in the middle of round 3?
Yeah, this is where I'm happy. This is my home right here, round 3.
And I think that's a point for people, especially rebuilders. Like, a lot of times you might have these veterans that, well, if I wait until during the season, I might be able to get a 2nd round pick when somebody gets desperate. This class is good enough that it might be worth it to just pass that risk on to somebody else, take a dart throw at one of these round 3 rookies, especially, and that's the thing I don't think we've figured out yet, because I'm seeing a lot of different stuff in the mocks we're doing. That will change when ADP settles a little bit, right? People are not going to want to go too far away from what everyone else has done, and we'll get a little bit more normal. But right now, a guy that might go early in round 2 or late in round 3, and there's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it.
Well, and it's people love chalk, and today is the first day of rookie minicamps. So you know the NFL teams aren't even settled on these guys, so we're not there yet. And I do think, though, if you do kind of if you're in your mind or on paper do your own set of rankings, putting those up against ADP, man, you can find some serious value.
Yes. Oh yeah. Figure go into the draft knowing like who is it that you like more than everyone else. And you're just going to continue to like these round 3 picks, at least the next one. Kimani Vidal goes late in round 3. Luke McCaffrey, Will Shipley, and Ray Davis. Other than Vidal, who do you love there at the end?
I love Ray Davis, but the situation is a little bit tough. You know, he's there behind Cook, and in a dynamic offense, he's a pass catcher. He can run between the tackles, but didn't get draft capital. Oh, he was my running back 3 pre-draft. Like, I really liked Ray Davis. I like this pick, especially at the back end of the 3rd. But you're going to have to probably shine it on for a little bit. You're going to have to wait. One
name we didn't see in that draft, in a 1 quarterback draft, I think he'll generally go in the first 3 rounds, Braelon Allen. And Mr. Scamper is making a very good point that when Breece Hall's contract's up, Braelon Allen's still going to be 19 years old. Like, you got plenty of time. He doesn't even turn 21 until 2025. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he'll be second contract 23 years old. Like, have at it. But
and maybe landed in the one place where it just doesn't really matter. This nonsense going to happen all year because of how good Puka was. And Adam, I'm not picking on you. Luke McCaffrey has Puka vibes. Every wide receiver in round 3 gets to say that for at least 3 years, right?
Yeah, well, we're all going to dig in trying to find the outliers now, but it's even, and I know that there were a few people banging that drum for Puka last year, but by almost every metric, by almost every eye. Like, it was impossible to see. It was just this perfect confluence of things that all happened at once. And look, Luke McCaffrey is a nice player,
Right.
but like, let's not get it spun up.
Let me read through round 3 one more time. I know you guys like to hear those names again. So Jalen Polk, Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton, Jalen McMillan, Javon Baker, Bucky Irving, Ben Sinnott, Jatavian Sanders, Kimani Vidal, Luke McCaffrey, Will Shipley, and Ray Davis. That wraps up round 3. I had one more comment that I wanted to show on here. Zach, we do really appreciate you coming on the show today. I'd like for you to tell everybody where they can find your work. Fantasy Cares chiming in, reminding people that your 2024 rookie write-ups raised over $1,000. So thank you for doing that. Tell everybody where they can find your stuff and what you've got coming.
Yeah, so those are still at fantasycares.org/dummies. And it's over 20,000 words, 56 rookie write-ups. All of these players I watched between 8 and 16 games. So like I've seen them play, and really appreciate any donations. Even if you don't want the rookie write-ups, go to fantasycares.org, donate, and you're going to see a lot of this coming leading into the Scott Fish Bowl. It's my favorite part of the community, Heath, and I know you're involved in it too. It's just the absolute best thing the community does.
Well, you know what, Zach, we appreciate you being here. You appreciate you doing that work. Appreciate everybody who was here in the chat, participating and listening on the podcast. We will talk to you next Tuesday.